In 2014, a team of researchers at the University of Passau did something nobody had done before. They put professional programmers inside an fMRI scanner and asked them to read code. Not write it, just read it. Understand what it did and predict the output, while their brains lit up on the screen in real time. The researchers had a hypothesis going in. Code looks like language. It has syntax, structure, vocabulary. So the obvious guess was that reading code would activate the same brain regions used for reading English or any spoken language. Areas like Broca's region, the part of the brain long associated with grammar and sentence processing. And at first, the results seemed to confirm exactly that. Language-related regions did light up. The obvious explanation held. Most researchers would have accepted that and moved on. Code is basically language. Case closed. But a few years later, a different team wasn't satisfied. Researchers led by Anna Ivanova at MIT decided to run a more careful version of the experiment. Same idea, programmers reading code inside a scanner. But this time, they compared two specific brain networks head to head. The language network, the same one activated when you read a sentence, and something called the multiple demand network, the brain system responsible for general problem solving. The kind of thinking you use for math, logic puzzles, and planning. The results flipped the original explanation upside down. When experienced programmers read code, it wasn't the language network doing the heavy lifting. It was the multiple demand network. The same system your brain uses to solve a math problem or plan a route through a maze. Reading code, it turned out, wasn't like reading a sentence at all. It was like solving a puzzle. That single finding forced scientists to rethink something they thought they already understood. So, what exactly does coding do to a programmer's brain? To answer that, you have to understand what happens the moment someone goes from a beginner staring at a wall of text to an expert who can scan the same code and immediately know what's wrong with it. Think about how a beginner reads code. Every line is new. Every bracket, every loop, every variable name has to be consciously worked out, one piece at a time. It's slow because nothing is automatic yet. Now think about an experienced developer looking at the exact same block of code. They don't read it line by line. They recognize it. That's a loop that's about to run forever. That's a null pointer waiting to crash. That's a classic off by one error. They're not solving the code from scratch. They're matching it against thousands of patterns their brain has already stored from years of practice. This is the same phenomenon researchers found decades earlier studying chess grandmasters, and it's not a coincidence. Expertise in almost any complex skill works by compression. A beginner's brain treats every situation as brand new information that has to be processed individually. An expert's brain has learned to chunk large amounts of information into single, recognizable units. A grandmaster doesn't see 32 individual chess pieces. They see a weak pawn structure. An experienced programmer doesn't see 40 individual lines of code. They see a recursive function that's missing a base case, same underlying mechanism, different pattern library. That answers what happens inside the skill itself, but it raises a bigger question. If years of coding reshape how someone processes a very specific kind of information, does that change follow them anywhere else? Does learning to code make you think differently outside of code? This is where the research gets more careful and more honest. For a while, there was a popular claim that learning to code, especially for children, would automatically boost general intelligence and problem solving in unrelated areas, just like the early Venezuela chess experiments seemed to show for chess. But when researchers actually tested this directly, the picture turned out to be more complicated. Some studies found real gains in specific reasoning skills, particularly around breaking large problems into smaller steps and thinking systematically about cause and effect. Other studies found the transfer was narrower than hoped, improving computational thinking specifically rather than intelligence broadly. The honest scientific answer isn't that coding makes you generally smarter, it's that coding trains a very specific and very useful mental habit. Decomposition, taking an overwhelming problem and breaking it into small pieces you can actually solve one at a time. That habit doesn't require a computer to be useful. Once your brain has practiced breaking a giant, tangled problem into an ordered sequence of smaller solvable steps thousands of times, it starts doing that automatically to problems that have nothing to do with code, planning a project at work, untangling a complicated argument, figuring out why a recipe went wrong. The skill was never really about programming languages. It was about learning a repeatable process for dismantling complexity. There's a physical side to this too. For most of the last century, scientists believed the adult brain was largely fixed. You could learn new facts, but the underlying wiring wasn't supposed to change much once you were fully grown. Then brain imaging technology improved, and researchers started directly comparing the brains of experienced programmers to people who had never written a line of code. What they found lines up with what's been observed in other high practice cognitive skills. Regions involved in working memory, pattern recognition, and sustained attention showed measurable differences with experience. This is neuroplasticity, the brain's ability to physically reorganize itself in response to repeated mental effort. Every time you trace through a piece of logic, hold multiple variables in your head at once, and predict what a program will do before running it, you're giving your brain a small, repeated workout in exactly those functions. But maybe the most important change isn't something you'd find on a brain scan. It's something almost every programmer has lived through personally. You spend 40 minutes tracking down a bug. You finally find it. One misplaced character, one wrong comparison, something absurdly small that broke everything. There's a specific kind of frustration that comes with realizing how much time you lost to something so tiny. Beginners often want to quit right there. Experienced programmers have learned something that has almost nothing to do with syntax. They've learned to separate the emotion of the mistake from the next action required to fix it. The code doesn't care how frustrated you are, it just needs the next correct step. That habit doesn't stay inside the editor. When a plan falls apart, when a project breaks in some frustrating and preventable way, people who've spent years debugging code tend to default to the same instinct. Stop dwelling on how it happened, start asking what the next fix actually is. It's a strange kind of emotional discipline that gets built, almost accidentally, through thousands of hours of small technical failures. When researchers first started scanning programmers' brains, they thought they were studying language processing. What they actually found was something closer to a second problem-solving system, one built entirely through repetition. The difference between someone who's brand new to code and someone who's spent a decade in it isn't raw intelligence. It's that one of them has spent years training a very specific kind of pattern recognition, and it happens one small bug, one small fix, one small decomposed problem at a time. That's what coding actually does to your brain. It doesn't happen in a single breakthrough moment. It happens quietly, one function at a time, until one day you realize you're not just writing programs differently. You're breaking down every complicated problem in your life the exact same way. What's the biggest thing coding has taught you that had nothing to do with actual programming? Let me know in the comments.